Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Nightreign. Today I've got a big one for you, my guide to all of the Nightlords, the weaknesses, what those actually do, how to prep and set up for each, the mechanics of the fight and more. As a heads up, this will cover the 7 Nightlords and not the final boss for spoilers sake, but I will be back to cover the post game and the final boss very shortly. For universal boss advice then, there's 3 main things I want to highlight. Firstly, that each weakness has a huge impact and you might be underrating that. Running lightning against the centaur meant we kept interrupting him over and over. It was run saving. It's impactful for the unique effects that each boss has in response, as well as the reduced damage and increased damage they take, alongside simple stuff like bigger stagger build up and increased DPS. So genuinely, a weapon with the right element just goes the distance, and you can pre-build that with a relic and mods and smithing stones from the mining tunnels if you need to. But honestly, just finding locations with that element tagged as the reward and farming that out for the full team is incredible. And you don't have to only use weapons. It could be an elemental spell, incantation, Ash of War. Once we finally took this seriously and always had the correct element, all 3 of us, it just makes such a difference. 2 other universal details to be aware of is the fact that there's new grab attack types that have a purple glow to them in Nightreign. It's a grab you can counter like the Makiri counter straight from Sekiro. So as enemies try to grab you and you see a purple glow, this means you can roll into them, just like you would in Sekiro, getting a special animation and dealing good stagger build up too. Many bosses have these grab attacks, and this purple effect just tells you that you can roll into it. Lastly, blocking in Nightreign is different to Elden Ring. It simply stops the damage. It works with your weapon blocking. Say two-handing it and blocking, it's just as good. The difference here is that it consumes a varying amount of stamina based on the context, but if in doubt against any attack, you can always block. So maybe try it. Alright, let's run down the list of the bosses, starting with the first one, Gladius, and going through this one pretty quick because I think we're all pretty comfortable. Gladius has a holy weakness. Allegedly, this makes the split apart phase end early, which is interesting, but this could be part of the just big DPS you get from it. Hitting Gladius with enough holy though definitely causes more stagger, especially in the split phase. And a consistent theme for debuffing enemies with the right element is temporary attack debuff and defense debuff, making the fight easier while it's affected. Now, the big detail with Gladius is that it moves around a lot. So try to use shorter combos or larger single charged hits, jump attacks, charged spells, Ashes of War, that kind of thing in your DPS windows. If you do get a stagger and a bigger DPS window, then obviously you make the most out of that, but he doesn't give you a lot of that, certainly not in solo. For a list of attacks, you want to look out for general biting. Slower bites will use all the heads and he'll rear back before he does it, whereas the faster multi-bite lunges kind of have it dash at you quickly. There's 2 main sword extend attacks. There's one where it's straight up and straight down in a slam, you could just roll this sideways, or there's the faster ones where it stands back on the hind legs and kind of spins once or twice. You can block these or roll these, but be aware that these horizontal spins can actually be affected by the height of the situation. So if the boss is on a sand dune, you can go a bit lower and under it and not even have to dodge. It does have a few range attacks in the form of fire blast from the mouth, just warming up in the mouth as a heads up, or say the fire sword sweep, where it lights the sword on fire and then sweeps this big cone of fire across the floor. So as usual, roll sideways. Now obviously the big thing here is the split up mechanic, where it glows red and splits into fireballs, and then 3 wolves at once. Be aware that transformation is a longer animation, so you have a moment to heal or buff and use an item. During this phase, the wolves will target one specific player, and you get a red marker to indicate that. This happens through various boss fights. So as it howls, all of the wolves will rush that target. 2 often charge, 1 will do a fire shot at the back. My advice on this is to run backwards and outrange it, or roll into the one with the first charge, and you can use that like a barrier for the others, actually allowing for potential good DPS. After they do this initial burst, they do this kind of RP sidewalk, so if the other players who don't have aggro are near, they can get some serious DPS off on those. But yeah, that's Gladius. Let's now talk about Adel, the jaw monster. The big detail here is its poison weakness. So whether using a poison weapon, Ash of War, or even throwing poison pots, just getting a poison proc will cause a unique vomit animation, where he's basically spewing it out of his system. This animation interrupts whatever he's currently doing and takes about 8 full seconds, which is insane. This can also work to interrupt an active grab, which is a key mechanic of his where he bites someone and can pretty much one-shot them in some cases. Since the grab leaves the boss pretty exposed while it's eating the player though, this is actually an easy window to build up a poison proc for the other players and save that guy. So because of this special feature, don't expect to deal a lot of damage with the poison directly, but when you reach phase 2 and you've got the mid-transition phase and maybe during certain animations you get the poison proc, it can actually play out. And in this context, it will do great damage. The main strat for this one though is just to keep to his legs and circle around to his back. His own animations have a lot of forward momentum and wide horizontal reach to those attacks. So roll into the attacks to avoid it, and that also lands you nicely where you can deal DPS. So yeah, a lot of biting, a lot of charging forward. In phase 2, it's a lot more interesting. The gravity lightning comes into play, so you've got a lot of rock lines that explode on the floor after a delay. Be sure to roll through those or even jump out of the way. But one of his biggest moves here is the huge lightning AoE. Like a channeled out explosion. You simply outrange this by sprinting fully out of there, but be aware of the lightning bolts that mark before they explode all over the fight arena. He'll also start to whip around and leap up into the air to slam down. You can roll these, but try again to stay near him. It leaves him quite exposed after each attack while he looks very silly upside down. So yes, a lot of phase 2 is about letting him charge you and rolling it to land next to him, while making sure to outrange the big explosion and evade the lightning bolts or ground shockwaves at the same time. So if you're the person without aggro, you got to be aware a lot of the attacks have that big AoE around them, so expect to roll even when you're not the target. Next up we have Gnoster, the insect boss. Its weakness is fire, resulting in increased damage overall, but in my experience, no special interaction. I will say though, in phase 1, it does feel like having more fire causes the scorpion to go stone form a lot more, keeping the mechanics of the fight a bit more limited, which is nice, but also keeps it a bit longer. Be aware the boss itself deals a lot of poison damage, so protection against that could be a good idea. Overall, this fight is a war of attrition. You have to play slow and smart, dealing the damage you can, when you can, if you're playing melee. Naturally, range goes the distance here, where you're able to free hit the scorpion, or just go for the moth, who has, not too dangerous animations to just free DPS. The problem with being melee here is the moth will force you off the scorpion a lot by spreading these massive poison clouds that you must get out of. So for phase 1, if you're melee, you attack the scorpion and ignore the moth, where if you're ranged, you can free hit the moth if you want, or the scorpion. It's pretty easy. Just be aware though that you must space out the moth, even using the scorpion as a blocker, especially when it's in stone form, if needed. For fighting the scorpion, try to stay at its back, hitting its tail and back legs, as when it slowly turns it's free DPS and you stay out of the frontal attacks. It will do a lot of slam AoEs you'll have to dodge roll though, and because of the poison clouds, expect to do a healthy amount of running out and then back in when they clear finally. So again, it's very hit and run because of it. Distance is your greatest ally against all of the moth attacks because they all have slow travel time. Now when the scorpion goes into the sand, just use whatever range attacks you have on the moth, otherwise get ready to kite and space it out once again. Halfway through the fight then, they combine and the moth rides on the scorpion's back, beginning to fire magic projectiles. Space out the transformation because it does a big roar that hurts. Then expect the two to start charging around. Avoid this by going sideways, sprinting and rolling at the last moment. Once again, the moth continues to decide how long your DPS windows are. Firing weak projectiles you can mostly ignore or roll, but it's also putting down magic beams of light that deal a lot of damage in a location. So you have to keep circling and moving out when the moth says no more DPS. So I don't think this fight has a lot of interesting mechanics really. It's just about managing the two targets at once. And if you can, ranged really helps. Speaking of that, now it's time for Maris, aka the Augur boss. Its weakness is lightning. The lightning causes a nice interruption and that familiar debuff, making them take more damage and deal less too. Now, using things like thrown lightning pots, lightning incantations, lightning basics from a weapon or ashes really help when you finally get to hit this thing. This is free to do during its kind of big sleep ultimate I'll talk about in a moment. But the reality of this is that the true biggest weakness of Augur is to have ranged attacks of any kind. Whenever I do an Augur run, I know I need ranged attacks. So even though I'm playing Wilder, I know I need a bow, I've got to find a bow in the run, and I've got to make that bow stronger if possible. You could get lucky and find a specific weapon with channeled Ashes of War that could work as a projectile. But also you can use spells, incantations, any ranged weapon you can find. In this case, I found a basic bow and upgraded it using smithing stones in the mine as usual. I also found 2 passives that enhanced ranged attack power because yeah, going to be a main source of output. Once I was settled there, I made sure that I had a lightning weapon for when that's available, and then made sure my 2 friends had some kind of range option, some kind of lightning output. Being melee only in this fight is a nightmare you're choosing to do. As far as his mechanics go, there's basically none to worry about. He slowly flies around, he's an easy target, assuming you've got any range attacks, you just keep hitting him. Generally though, he shoots forward or double sweeps waves at you, just roll sideways on both. Maybe he sends some slow moving humming jellyfish that explode after a delay, so you just keep moving. That's easy to do because this fight is all about chasing him around anyway. He does spawn in these funny tube-like creatures at times, and if you kill them, they seem to send missiles that hurt Augur for a small bit, so it's something to do if you're a melee only. But the 2 main moves here are the self bomb and the magic bombs. The self bomb is when he tries to float and fall to the ground, and after a delay, builds up a lot of sleep to burst you and leave you exposed. To stop that, you have to interrupt him. This is when we rush him with lightning-based melee weapons, any other lightning output we have. The lightning proc will of course interrupt him, but you can also just deal enough damage and poise break, that works too, such as using an ultimate. This is actually an amazing DPS window you don't want to waste. Otherwise, he will also do the fly around and drop these 2 teardrop-like sleep bombs. They are very nasty. You can definitely iframe at least one easily with, say, using an ultimate at the right time, but if you can attack them with ranged projectiles, you can actually destroy them, preventing their bomb entirely. So, coordinated DPS on them, very important. Overall, a very simple fight. You must bring ranged attacks of some kind, or you're gonna suffer. Next up we have Libra, the goat boss, and his weakness is madness. Finding madness in a normal run though is really rare. Only Cotton ever found a version of it to run in a fight where he was proccing it by slow walking, and even then, it only seemed to cause a brief, not that noticeable stun. But if you can get madness, I still think try it. My bigger advice here is actually be aware that he's using both holy and madness against you. So madness resistance can reliably come from relics, that really helped me. Also, you can find clarifying boluses or buy them from traders to pop mid-fight and cleanse madness. Otherwise, the usual physical or holy resistance, they're important too. The unique mechanic before the fight here is being offered a deal. Now, I think it's RNG that decides the options you're offered, but you can actually choose one and see what it vaguely tells you're going to get. The best one I've seen is a temporary loss of health and FP, but after a period of time, you get a massive boost to both. Otherwise, more than often, you just reject the offer and fight normally. It's a safe bet. Overall, the mechanics aren't that hard. It's when the fight gets out of hand that it gets hard. Initially, you see a light mix of holy seals that pop under you or fire forward in a burst. For those ground sigils, they appear, pause, then explode. So roll with that delay in mind. Then for the air sigils, just run out of the way. When you fail the bubble mechanic though, they start to turn, where it gets a lot harder. You should also expect a lot of madness sprouts from above him. They build a small amount, and there's these constant holy little nodes on the ground that if you pick up, actually cleanse a little bit of madness. So as long as you're running into those now and then, should be okay. He does also fight directly with the staff for simple combos, not too bad. Things get interesting at the first bubble and seal mechanic though. He hangs in the air in an immune bubble. If you let him finish that channel, his seal mechanics start to build up worse, there's more madness, it's a lot harder to deal with. But if you break the golden seals around him, that interrupts him, causing him to go in a melee frenzied mode for a bit. In that frenzied mode, expect a triple melee slam, and then a big madness AoE of some kind. There's gaps between the yellow on the ground version, so you can avoid that easily, but the yellow hanging in the air version is harder to avoid, so maybe just run out. Be aware that you can actually interrupt the bubble with a big poise break though. Various ultimates will allow for that. I recommend waiting on that and using it on the second bubble phase where there's a lot more seals appearing. Though for that one, maybe have a bow or range tool on hand because it helps. But be aware you can run into them and roll into them if you have a slow weapon. Otherwise, pretty simple mechanics, just a lot thrown at you all at once. Be sure during his super attack that channels a load of madness buildup though to run around picking up a lot of holy motes to prevent that madness buildup. You can also interrupt him to stop the channel completely. But yeah, madness resistance, it really helps. Almost finished, we now have Fulghor the Centaur. His weakness is lightning, and it is an incredible weakness indeed. It causes a big explosion of lightning and staggers him briefly. It can proc many times a fight and actually was really helpful in our first kill. You'll see that while he's affected by the lightning, he has this kind of lightning debuff, again making him deal less and take more, which is great. But it's not until that lightning effect ends that you can interrupt him with the next proc. If possible, time that proc during an animation that you want to stop. But as a fight, you're going to find Fulghor quite mobile. He runs around and jumps for a lot of his attacks or cleaves the wind at you. So there's pauses after these, but during he's quite mobile. It's often best for the target of his aggro to evade the attacks and try to stay still. This means he at least sticks in some place for a bit. If he charges you with a combo with the spear, try to roll around and behind him. Rotating around and being close to him keeps him in place too. Be wary of the leap slams though. These cause ground fissures around the impact, so basically other players might not have aggro, but they still have to outrange this or dodge this at the same time. One big move that seems like a good idea to interrupt with the lightning proc though is the glowing spear attack, where he pauses, puts power into the spear, and slams it into the ground. Then after a brief delay, a holy spear jumps out the ground under every player at once. You can roll that if you understand the timing, because there's no outranging that. With this, holy spears begin to create areas of damage to avoid too, so definitely interrupt this one with the lightning proc if you can. For phase 2, Fulghor grows a big poison arm that has larger range to its attacks. Many of these attacks will leave a kind of poison wave after it, so rolling backwards or sideways will start to backfire. You need to roll into and behind him just as before, circling around him to avoid the attacks. With this arm, he does have an extended combo now that's like 5 or 6 attacks long, so if you can keep rolling into and behind him, you'll actually keep him still for a very long time for great DPS for your allies. But otherwise, most of his attacks just are familiar with a slight increase to the combo thanks to the arm. So yeah, interrupt him with lightning procs whenever most relevant, time ultimate iframes for a long combo as a backup, and try to stick close to him and circle around him if you have the aggro. Alright, last up we have Caligo, the dragon. This ice dragon is of course weak to fire, which when procced leaves these red lights on his body showing the debuff. Again, this debuff should reduce his attack and defense, which is important because this one has a big health pool. On that note, bleed should work great because it works great against bigger health bars. Caligo has quite the moveset. Many attacks will leave ice on the ground, so you definitely want to avoid standing in that. But he's got, say, sweeping ice breath, so you need to run away from or get past before it reaches you. Or the straightforward ice breath or double wing channel of the ice forward. These can be sideways rolled out of and are longer animations for free DPS. He uses the tail to whip and slam in a line, again roll sideways on that. And if you stay under him too long, he'll breathe ice under himself, so you have to run out. One of the worst moves he has is the flying drive-by though, where he channels a load of ice shards and shoots you like a machine gun while flying past. He'll go by in the air twice, land, and then do this while on the ground. The range of this attack is insane, so make sure you're sprinting sideways and rolling at the last moment. Some of the more interesting moves though are definitely the special fly away and create fog tricks. There's two kinds. For one, you follow the sounds of tinkling ice and then find him sort of channeling this huge ice above himself, hide under the dragon for safety on that one. But you can also outrange it by running away very far. Or, if he's doing the other one, you look for where the wind is being sucked in towards him and rush towards that. And then hide behind a pillar to avoid the massive ice blast that follows. Towards his later phase though, he will also sweep forward and spread ice bombs around himself, blowing them up in a small area around them at the same time that he slams a tail in a line. Quite a lot to deal with, so try to space this out. Weirdly, I found him one of the easier bosses, even though he has more mechanics. I think I'm just very familiar with, Souls dragons. And there's great DPS windows on this guy. So be in it for a long fight, but make the most out of the many DPS windows he provides. But yeah, there you have it. Those are the 7 Nightlords and the details and advice that I think is going to be most helpful for them. I hope that gives you confidence to take them on next time you do, with a proper plan to work on before you even get there in many cases. We'll be back to cover the post game and the final boss very soon though, so until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.